guys, this is Lauren.
And this is London.
And this is Do Some Sage About It. So, our first episode had a lot of comments about the meowing. And that's Odin, and he was just mad that I would not let him suck on my shirt. So, he voiced his concerns. So, this is our second episode. How do you feel about the first one?
Feels a little bit, I don't know, I guess unreal that we actually finally got it done after months
yeah.
of waiting. So, I'm excited to be on our second episode.
Yeah, me too. And Misha's excited about the watermelon. Okay, so I don't really know how to lead into this one this time, since last time we kind of had a theme because it was Samhain. So I guess we're just gonna get into it. You went first last time, so do you want me to go first this time?
Yeah, okay. You go first.
My first ghost story is out of New Orleans, Louisiana. And if you've ever been to New Orleans, I guarantee that you have seen this hospital. Like, you can't miss it. It's beautiful. It's huge. It is closed and kind of run down, but that's kind of what makes it ghosty, I guess. So, this hospital, it opened in May of 1736, so it's been there for a very long time.
What, 300 years?
Math. And it was established by Jean-Louis, who wanted to provide medical care for the indigent of New Orleans. And basically that means the people who can't really pay for medical service. People who don't have money, insurance.
Did they even have insurance back then?
I don't know. I wasn't alive then. I was born
200 years later.
Probably more than that if this thing is like 300 years old, because I'm not close to 300. I'm not even close to 100. I'm a little over a quarter of the way there.
You're almost half.
Well, you get out. You no longer live here. Anyway, so Jean-Louis, he wanted to be able to provide adequate care, medical care, for people who couldn't really afford it. And he really wasn't looking to turn a profit. He just wanted to help. But in 1809, the hospital was destroyed, entirely in a fire. And then in, 1858, there was a yellow fever epidemic. And there were 2,727 people who were admitted into this hospital during that time.
Jesus Christ.
It's a lot of people, and a little over 1,400 of them died. So, with yellow fever, it's basically what it states. You get, a high fever, so these people were delirious and, not really, a lot of them didn't really know what was going on, because the fever was so high, they didn't have a lot of cognitive ability at that time to know they were in a hospital because they were sick. So when these people started dying, oh my God. So, the hospital only had 2,700 beds. And remember, 2,727 people were admitted. This is
so they probably had them in
overflow. Yeah. So 1,400 people. That's a lot of death.
It's almost half.
Almost half, yeah. 100 less than half. So you can imagine how many spirits linger just from that alone. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina basically finished the hospital off. They took on severe damage from flooding, and it's been empty ever since. But here's the thing about the hurricane, they did not evacuate this hospital prior. So all of these patients and people that they had there, nurses,
all the
staff, the doctors, the janitorial people, all the patients were still there, and they were not being evacuated when they needed to be. It was too late when they decided to evacuate this specific hospital. Ray Nagin really dropped the ball during Hurricane Katrina for New Orleans. You know, this was, I mean, they get hurricanes through there all the time, as you know. We live, like, right next door, you know. And Katrina was bad. We went through it here. You weren't alive yet. It was 2 years before you were born.
Year and a half.
So it's not like New Orleans has never seen a hurricane before. We are hurricane area. And the unfortunate part about New Orleans, even though it is beautiful and one of my most favorite places, is that the city is the Soup Bowl. The whole city of New Orleans, it is below sea level. So when it rains like that, or when the levees break, which is what happened, all that water goes right into the bowl.
Like, starts with P. But that lake, when the levees from
Lake
that
Pontchartrain.
one, those levees broke, it flooded
everything. And so think about it like this. So if you've got a single bowl sitting in a sink, and you fill up the sink, like plug it and fill it up, those are the levees. When it reaches the top of that bowl and those levees break, that water starts going into the bowl, you know, and then the bowl is sinks. Underwater. Right. Now, New Orleans obviously did not sink. It's already sunken. But all that damage, all that standing water, the flooding, and how quickly it happened affected this hospital and any attempt that they made to evacuate it. So again, a lot of people kind of died in that hospital due to Katrina. And a lot of the time, especially here, hospitals are safe. They're built for that kind of stuff.
I barely remember the hurricanes we've had over the last 4 years.
Well, Zeta was the worst, and that was 3 years ago. So we've been pretty lucky. So, anyway, back to the story. So, a couple years ago, a nurse who works at a hospital that's like across the way was going out, leaving. She was in the parking garage, and she parked like on the top floor. She's up there looking around, and she happens to see this light in the window in this hospital that's not been occupied since 2005. This was within like the last year or two. This is super recent. So she sees this light, and it's just one single light, just one room. And again, like, there's no electricity, no power, nothing going to this hospital because it's
abandoned.
Yeah, it's abandoned. It's been ruined and destroyed twice now. And so they just basically, like, they gave up. But this lady said that it kind of looked like a Christmas tree. Like lights of a Christmas tree. They kind of believe that whoever or whatever this is, spirit or whatever, puts the lights up during, like, holiday time. So it's kind of like a little happy thing, but it's also,
it's still
like,
kind of unnerving.
Really fucking creepy. Obviously, this area, it's in New Orleans, and you know New Orleans is like voodoo, haunted, all that. So it is obviously believed that this hospital is super haunted.
I mean, there's 1,400,
minimum.
At least 1,400 spirits in there, so...
Well, not necessarily,
spirits,
because...
just souls that the hospital claimed.
Right. But that doesn't mean they're all there. You know, not every soul or spirit stays behind. Some of them are satisfied and they move on.
Yeah, it's mainly the ones that stay have... It's been rumored they have unfinished business, and then when they do what, like it says, like their body knows what needs to be done, and then once they do it, they finally able to cross over.
Yeah, I mean, and some people might just be like, nah, fuck that, I'm staying.
JD.
That's gonna be me.
Yeah.
When I die, I'm gonna be like, I'm staying. I'm gonna fuck with these people for the rest of their life. One thing that kind of breaks my heart about this whole story is when people had been going through, like, the wreckage after the hurricane, when the flooding had gone down, you know, like I said, they had to evacuate suddenly, kind of. The people who were looking in the building found several containers of human body parts. It was marked for the morgue, but because the evacuation was so sudden, it never made it there. So, people who passed away, possibly, in the hospital, you know, if they were having their organs harvested, you know, or whatever, they just basically ended up in storage totes.
Oof.
And left there. Yeah. Outside of the Christmas lights being seen, people who have been in there hear, like, distant sounds of laughter or crying. You know, like, it doesn't really specify if it's like they think it's nurses or patients or anything like that. They just hear the laughter or the crying. And one former nurse did report prior to Katrina seeing a ghostly figure standing at the foot of several different patients' beds. And these were terminal patients. And so when she spotted that figure, a couple hours later, that patient was dead.
Ooh.
But she said, you know, when she went in the room to kind of see who was in there, because there wasn't supposed to be anybody, because it was after visiting hours, that it stayed there for a little bit, and she said there was just this calm, comforting presence. So it was more like maybe a spirit guide or
helping them
helping
get ready.
Cross over, yeah. And she said she saw it numerous times with different patients who were getting ready, you know, who were at the end of their life.
They were on their deathbed.
Yeah, more or less. There also have been reports of inexplicable cold spots throughout the hospital. Like, the rest of it's warm, and then you just hit, like, a pocket of cold air.
Yeah, and that's typically where where people say ghosts are, when you get, like, a chill, or when you walk through and you're like,
oh.
Yeah.
And they also, on top of the laughter and the crying, hear, like, weird, creepy whispers in the hallway when they're completely alone. Like, in your ear whispers.
Oh, wow.
Not like from down the hallway when they're just in the hallway.
Like you're in my bubble.
Yeah, it's like, you know what, they probably say something. Objects move on their own. That's like classic ghosts. Anyway, objects move on their own. It really didn't specify like what kind of objects, or if this was while the hospital was open and active, or if this was post-Katrina. I could imagine both, because just because a building is shut down and no longer operating does not mean the ghosts leave or the paranormal activity stops. And a lot of the spirits are believed to be the former doctors and nurses who died trying to save patients during Katrina. So a lot of people have claimed to see, you know, the white lab coats, the stethoscopes, you know, no face really, just a humanoid figure in doctor or nurse attire. But the cool thing about this hospital is that it has appeared since it's been closed in, twice since it's been closed. It's appeared in movies. In 2013, it was in a movie called Hours. And recently, 2023, it was in Renfield.
Ooh, Renfield was good.
I still haven't seen it. But the basement was used as Renfield's lair. So if you have seen that movie, you have seen the basement prior to closing because of Hurricane Katrina. It was in some TV shows. It was in TLC's Code Blue, in 2 episodes of TLC's Trauma, Life in the ER, and then it was in New York Med. So, again, it's beautiful. Like, even in its torn down, dilapidated state, it is gorgeous. I will post some pictures on our social so you guys can kind of see. It's. Are you looking it up? Yeah, it's beautiful. Like, it is
What's it called again? I forgot.
absolutely Charity Hospital. It is absolutely New Orleans-esque. I mean, it's beautiful. And to me, it's even more beautiful in its dilapidated, not well taken care of state.
There's debris on it. It's a big hospital.
It's huge, but it's beautiful.
It is. It's really pretty.
You know, it kind of reminds me of the old, like, New Orleans cemeteries, kind of. Like how those headstones look. The stone with, like, the black moss and everything on it. It's beautiful, in my opinion.
So, I'm going to leave New Orleans for now. But this is about Fort Wetherill in Jamestown, Rhode Island. So,
I don't like the fort ones.
this one's not as bad as the last one.
Okay.
Surprisingly. Okay, so this one, it has a very dark history associated with the horror and paranormal, but it's not like the last fort was. So, it was originally built as a coastal defense battery in the late 1900s century. So, the fort witnessed...
Wait, the late 1900s or the
no,
late 19th century?
The late 19th century.
Okay.
But the fort witnessed a lot of unsettling events over the years. There was mysterious deaths and unexplained disappearances that just happened. They were there one day, and then they weren't the next, and they couldn't figure out what had happened.
Was this like during wartime or?
This fort, even though it was a fort, it never received any direct battle. Things were just happening. People have claimed to seen apparitions, heard disembodied voices, and just experienced a lot of unease, and people have been said to have thrown up. They walk in and they just,
Sick.
yeah, when your stomach turns and you're like, I can't hold this back anymore, when they step onto the grounds.
That's crazy. I want to go there.
And it's mainly when they're exploring the abandoned tunnels and chambers.
And where is this?
Jamestown, Rhode Island. It's not too far from the Conjuring House.
Jamestown?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking Jonestown. Completely different. Okay, proceed.
But the most common and mainly found on towards the base of the fort, there is what they call the demon dog. But he's not an evil dog. He's just a black dog. They see he looks evil. He's got glowing red eyes and he barks and growls, but people have said he's doing it to warn them that there's death near. 2 people went in together. They had seen the demon dog. One was like, I'm gonna stay, you can leave if you want, because the dude was like, I thought I was brave enough for this. I'm not. But when one of the dudes saw him, he was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Fuck
you can
this.
stay.
I'm out.
And so, one stayed, one left. The dude who left said as soon as he stepped off the premises, he felt a relief. The one who stayed, after 4 hours of his friend staying in the building, he waited for his friend. Like, just
in
out.
the car?
Yeah, like, off of the premises. He was just chilling, doing his thing. This was back in 2017.
Oh, so recent.
Yeah, so he was chilling, and then he was calling and texting his friend, like, where are you? Let's go home. Because they drove together, so he wasn't just going to leave.
Well.
He was like, where are you? Where are you? There was no response.
What was that? Hello? What was that?
The ghost was like, stop fucking talking about me. There's nothing in here.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking.
Oh, well.
Okay. Well, maybe he didn't like my Blink-182 rendition.
But so the dude goes back in. He takes all of the courage he has in him to go back in and look for his friend. But he finds his friend. His friend has 1,000-yard stare. This man has seen things while being in here for 4 hours.
4 hours.
And he was barely away from the entrance. He was maybe 300 feet from the entrance. Not far at all. And he was just on the floor, fetal position, shaking, scared to death. And he kept asking his friend what happened, and he said, the women.
The women?
But about that, there was 4 women who were brutally murdered and dumped in the fort.
Like, were they murdered at the fort or just brought there?
They were just dumped there. And because
Gross.
they were bad. It was pretty bad. But they had been there for 20 years prior. So,
oh my God.
In those 20 years, there was over 2,000 phone calls made to police about, hey, there's something happening in here. Something's not right. Someone needs to check out this building. I can hear screaming.
Was it closed down?
Nope.
So when did they hear screaming? Like
it's open 24/7.
Oh.
They would just go in throughout the day, and they can just hear it. Hear screaming in the park area, in the building itself. They just hear screaming and begging.
Nope.
They said 2 of the women, these women were they were in their early 20s, like the oldest was 25.
Yeah.
So he heard 2 of them begging and pleading for their lives.
That's so sad.
And when the dude finally had come to, he said that he would rather take a bullet to the head than ever step foot back on this premises because of the things he saw. And even though, like I said, the fort never received any direct war, it was just kind of there just in case. People have seen soldiers from both World Wars in full uniform, saluting, everything, just walking the grounds with their guns. And people have heard gunfire, not seen anything in the air, not like seen any debris or anything. They've just heard it go off. And police have come for this, just, check it out. Even police officers have said there's something not right about this building. But it has been said that there's like a little river outside the fort that when you walk across, you can see, I guess like it wasn't a river before, and it just had filled with water and kind of just stayed that way.
Became a river?
Yeah, people have seen these shoulders.
The shoulders.
Soldiers walking, just walking over the water, but they were on the ground. I guess when they were around, there was a ground. But
what?
I don't know. Like, it wasn't water. Because it was kind of, they could just see them walking.
So basically, what you're saying is the soldiers were kind of following the normal footpath that they took prior to when this became a river.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were just following it.
Sense, yeah.
And people, when they walk across the mouth of it, they have felt like something has entered their body, like gone through them. And they say it feels like they get really cold, and then as soon as whatever leaves, I guess, they feel super hot.
So they feel cold when it's there and then super hot when it's gone?
Yeah, they feel like something's going into their bodies, like it's walking through them. Especially like towards the middle of the river, that's where most of them have been seen walking from.
Okay.
So like when they stand right there in the middle of the bank.
Mhm. That's where their like shoulders, you're seeing like shoulder and head. You're not seeing the full body.
Mhm. And they feel like they're going through them to like pass through them because they won't walk around. They have said the ghosts won't walk around. They'll go straight through. They follow this path every single time. It has also been said that the youngest of the 4 women, who was 21 at the time, has been seen with the dog, who she named Terry. She could have picked any name. Terry with an I.
Terry.
And she could have picked any better name, but I guess it has been said that that was her dog before she, not the demon dog, but her dog's name was Terry before she had died. So she kind of saw resemblance from the demon dog to her dog. But it has been said that they will circle the park looking for people to not, like, harass or anything. The women and the dog have been known to be the nicest of the ghosts, besides them begging and screaming for their lives. But they have been known to walk around. People have seen the demon dog eating food left on the ground. Kind of like, not necessarily eating it, but like wanting to eat it. You know how dogs are. They want to...
No, they want to eat everything.
Yeah, they want to eat everything. So they have seen it like go near the food. People have said it, sometimes it looks like a ghost dog and sometimes it looks like a regular dog. Like
dog.
full body dog. Sometimes it's just his head. People have been known to say...
I love dogs, but if I see just a dog head, I'm probably going to go the other way. No, I probably pet it.
You'd probably pet it.
Yeah.
But people have been known to see him chasing after the youngest of the four women, playing.
Yeah.
Which I feel is kind of cute, knowing that this dog has a good life. Even in the afterlife,
Yeah.
he has a good life with these...
He has his humans.
Yeah, with these four white women. Because if you're going to see... Because if a white woman sees any animal could be deadly, they're going to take it home and put clothes on it. You dress up or be a dragon. So.
Yeah, but he's not deadly. He's just a butthole.
It has also been said that there was like 2,500 soldiers, and again, none of them had passed at the fort. They were just that maybe they had been placed there during the wars, and maybe trained there, and that's where they felt safe after the wars.
Or they could have died like soon after leaving the fort, and that's the
Kind of where
closest
they
thing
were
in their memory.
Yeah. But the tunnels underneath it, I mean, this, like I said, this thing is open 24/7. You can explore the whole thing. The tunnels underneath it, they had closed them for about 15 years. But with all of the people would be above the tunnels, and they would still hear stuff coming from underneath the tunnels. Like running.
Nope. Oh, hell no.
But what they think it was is the dog, because that's where the dog mainly was.
No.
Was under the tunnels.
No.
But so, yeah.
No.
Yeah. But because people still heard things in the tunnels, the police opened it back up and were searching.
Oh.
Because of all the phone calls that were made.
Yeah.
They had reopened the tunnels just, check it out because they...
But it wasn't open to the public. It was just open so they could kind of investigate.
For them. And then when they saw nothing under there, they're like, there's nothing in here. I don't really care. You guys can... It's open to the public again. So they reopened it. People have gone in, found somebody had punched a hole in the wall.
In a cement tunnel?
Mm-hmm.
The fuck?
Or like it was kind of wet cement, kind of falling apart.
Ew.
So they had made a hole in the wall. There was bones in the wall.
Oh.
They don't know what kind of bones.
They didn't test them?
Nope.
Why?
The police said, I'm not going back in there. They're like, you guys can do whatever you want in the tunnels, just don't call us to go back in the tunnels. I don't want to go back in there. I don't like how I feel in there. The four women, they kind of run the fort, I guess.
They're in charge. Okay, cool. Women supporting women. Love it.
They all watch over everything. They've also been seen to trim hedges.
What?
Mm-hmm. The outside, just to make it look pretty. Yeah, they have been seen mowing the grass. Just...
That is so weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
just
when I'm dead, I'm not doing housework.
They're just seen in sundresses, mowing the grass, cutting hedges. But like I said, they have been seen doing yard work.
No.
They've also been seen cooking and cleaning up after people who have left it. Because teenagers, you know how teenagers are. Teenagers are messy.
I got 4 of them.
Yeah. When they would trash the place, the women were seen cleaning up after them.
Why? Okay.
They're kind of like the caregivers of it.
But here's my question. If this place is open 24/7 and it's a national park, national landmark, whatever.
They have custodial people.
Right, so like why are these people being allowed to destroy this place?
They don't really care.
What?
Okay. So they'll just clean up everything, make sure everything's all pretty for the crowds and stuff, because it's not always full of people. People have said they have seen mirrors being cleaned, and they'll see like reflections of them walking through the mirrors, just smiling.
They can come here and clean this house, because I don't want to do it.
But with the dog, he has also been seen to sit in laps. If you sit on the floor, he'll get in your lap, and he was like a pit bull.
Oh,
so people have said they have felt something heavy in their lap, and they can hear panting.
Oh, so okay. Definitely have to go.
Yeah, they said
I'm gonna bring like bones.
Like they have said, he'll just sit in laps, pant. Oh. People have said they felt licks on their face. I don't know. I'd kind of be a little freaked out by that if I was just sitting there. Next thing I know, my face is all wet because of a ghost slobber.
Well,
but like I said, this dog, even though he's got red glowing eyes, has been deemed the devil dog. He is the sweetest little ghost dog.
Oh, babies.
And it doesn't say how the dog ended up there. The dog was an old dog, so maybe it was hopefully natural causes.
Yeah.
He looks like a healthy, big, chunky. Well, not like chunky, but like bulky, because pit bulls, I don't know why, but all of them are bulky.
Yeah.
Like muscly.
Yeah, not all of them.
Yeah, some of them are fat. He's been seen to just kind of be the mascot, I guess.
Oh.
But, yep, that's Fort Withrow, and luckily it's not as bad as the last one.
Yeah, that wasn't bad at all. Alright, so we're going to Boston, Massachusetts. A couple hours away from where I was born in Greenfield, Massachusetts. And we are going to talk about the King's Chapel Burial Ground. This is the oldest graveyard in the city. It was established in 1630. It's old. And this is the final resting place of the early base settler Isaac Johnson. He basically owned the property, and he really, really loved like gardening and stuff, like flowers, pumpkins, and that is what the grounds were initially used for prior to his death. But he did say that when he passed, he did want to be buried in the pumpkin patch. Like, he wanted to be
along with the pumpkins.
Among his pumpkins, his garden, because he was very, very proud of it. So after his interment, the land was still used as grave sites for over 30 years because it was the only graveyard in the city for 30 years. So from when he died and was entered into the ground, 30 years past that, other people were buried there because they didn't have anywhere else designated to bury them. Because it was in the 1600s, they kind of just buried people randomly and scattered the gravestones, the grave markers randomly. Like, they were with the bodies, but it wasn't in nice, neat rows like it is now. That didn't come about until between 1837 and 1901, when grave sites were being considered attractive recreational parks. So, during this time, between 1837 and 1901, King's Chapel grounds were beautified. So the city added like greenery, footpaths, and picnic areas. So because there were not these standards in the 1600s when this initially became a graveyard, when they started the beautification process and making it kind of a standard to where everything was kind of in a nice, neat line and, you know, like how cemeteries look today, they were just basically putting the grave markers and the headstones into a neat line. And so that meant people who were buried were no longer associated with their headstone.
Ooh.
Right, that's rough. So this is thought to be the beginning of all of the mysterious happenings, because this meant that the spirits were kind of left to wander.
Not knowing where their actual
Right.
placement is.
Right. So it was kind of just a big clusterfuck moving this stuff around, because they did not unearth the bodies and move them to correspond with the headstones. They just basically lined them up nice and neat, and then that was it. They just left alone. So that was like a huge problem. Over 1,000 people were buried there, but only about half of the grave markers remain.
Ooh.
So there's like 400, 500, 600 people
Just
without
wandering.
identification. And it just sucks, because the headstones no longer correspond with the remains that lay beneath. You know, so this headstone and this body don't match. Or there could be a headstone where there is no body. Right, or a body without a headstone. So it's kind of rough. There are some notable headstones that are in the cemetery. There is one of Joseph Tapping, and his is kind of like right there at the front. And it's a gravestone that depicts the constant struggle of life and death. And it's like a skeleton pulling and then Father Time pulling, kind of trying to tip the scales in one favor or the other. It's very ornate. Another one is Elizabeth Payne. She was the inspiration for Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter. Another was John Winthrop, and he was the colony's first governor.
Oh, yeah,
and then Paul Revere.
I know that one too.
Definitely, everybody knows Paul Revere. If you ever paid attention in history class, you should know who Paul Revere is. And also Reverend John Cotton. Not sure who that is, but he was like an honorable mention as far as like the important people who were buried in this cemetery that they know of. So now we can get to the ghosts of King Chapel. The saddest one for me is the Headless Woman. She is often seen in the westernmost portion of the cemetery. She is a African American woman, and after her death, the carpenter who had made her coffin had miscalculated the measurements and made the coffin too short, which is why it's important to measure twice, cut once. So instead of finding a coffin to fit the right proportions of this female, the mortician decided that he was just going to saw her head off.
Ooh.
Yeah, and he placed it at her feet between her legs before sealing her coffin for interment. So, like, I don't know how the funeral process was then. A lot of the time, I think they just kind of laid them on tables, like decorated tables, and then they get put in the coffin. So, I'm not sure, like, if her family had to see her like that with their head cut off.
I'd be pretty pissed.
Yeah.
If I had to see that, or even if it happened to me, obviously I'd haunt
that
ground.
Right. So she's seen a lot wandering in the cemetery, and it's the Headless Woman. That's kind of the story behind her. Another one is that the locals often tell of a man who was buried alive in the 19th century. There was an issue in the Chicago Tribune, and it was on July 19th of 1896. So this man was buried like a long time ago. And this specific, I guess it's a magazine, addressed the topic, claiming there was a plethora of exhumed graves that had showed signs of activity in the casket. Meaning people were being buried prematurely. They were being buried alive. Yeah, like during the time of TB and all of these plagues and everything. Some of the symptoms mimicked death, which is why they began to tie, like ribbons or cord around their wrist in the coffin, and it would come out of the grave and loop on like a wooden or a metal pole with a bell on it. And so if someone was alive and they were moving,
they would hear it.
They would hear it. That is kind of where the term, well, it's two different terms. The graveyard shift, because at night, when the cemeteries were basically empty, there was someone out there who was supposed to be listening for these bells. Because that meant that person was alive. Also the term dead ringer. That's where that comes from. Yeah. So basically they're saying there was like a shit ton of coffins exhumed that showed this activity, but in the same sentence they claimed there was a slim chance of premature burial. Like, how is it both?
The math is not mathing there.
No, it is not mathing at all. So, but with this man, the legend has it that a man was buried alive by family members who wanted ownership of his property.
I mean, that's one way to do it.
Oh, I mean, I guess. So, they buried him alive. I don't know, it didn't really specify, like, if they drugged him with, like, cyanide or whatever they had back in the day, cocaine, do some coke about it, whatever. But basically, they buried this man alive. And an old woman who I guess knew the gentleman or knew the family was absolutely convinced that this is what happened to this man. So she got a group of people and they all went to the cemetery and demanded that the grave be opened. And when it was, there had been evidence that the man
was still alive.
Had been alive at the time of burial. Because there were claw marks in the top part of the coffin.
Trying to get out.
Him trying to get out, and his, his fingertips were messed up and parts of his fingernails were missing. So, even though they did find this evidence, they never really specified whether it was the family that did it. Again, because sometimes the doctors were burying people who were alive without realizing it because of the issues.
Would they at least have a pulse, maybe?
So, like, some of the diseases or medications can make your heart beat
slow and faint.
Like 1 beat a minute, but you're alive. And again, you got to think this was the 1600s, 1700s. They did not have medical advancements, you know. If you were laying there, eyes closed and still, and they poked you and said your name, and you didn't respond,
they'd be like,
dead.
You're dead.
You're dead.
You're dead.
You're done. That's it. So, it was an issue, you know, and it was very upsetting for this group of people, especially this woman, to see the evidence that this man tried to claw his way out of the coffin because he was not dead. The night visitors, you know, because cemeteries are typically open, some of them are open like 24/7. Some people who visit at night, they have claimed to hear screaming all over the cemetery. Like from underneath the ground, like muffled screaming.
Probably from the ones who are buried alive.
Yeah, and so that again points to the possibility of numerous premature burials. For screaming to be heard all over the cemetery, not just in one spot, you know. Another honorable mention of who is buried in the cemetery is someone named Captain Kidd, and he was initially hired by the governor to search for and capture pirates, because again, 1600, right? Pirates.
I mean, if I had a job just to capture pirates, I'd be pretty happy.
I mean, well, yeah, I don't know. I've never met a pirate. I've met several parrots. But later, he was actually arrested for piracy on the high seas because while he was out there searching for pirates, he was being one. Anyway, so he was arrested, but he was also arrested for murder. He murdered someone named William Moore. So he was tried for piracy on the high seas and the murder of William. When he was found guilty, he was actually hung from a tree in King's Chapel.
Ooh, that's what
like,
they did back
in
then.
the cemetery. Like, didn't at the jail where normally this stuff happens. So, obviously, he was buried there. And so the visitors claim to see his ghost and hear his voice in the cemetery. Anyway, they see him and hear him. And then others have claimed to see, like, orbs of light in photographs that are taken around his gravesite. The sight of, like, flashes of light when they're doing video or photos, but they only see it visually. It doesn't ever get captured in the photo or the video. They do see shadowy figures everywhere. And when people have been there specifically around his gravesite, when they're taking videos and pictures or whatever, they disappear off of their phones and cameras. And that is all I have on King's Chapel. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, Massachusetts is pretty wildly haunted, just in general, because it was one of the original 13 colonies. So lots of death, lots of murder, lots of witches.
Okay, but we're going back to New Orleans. This one, I'm gonna brace you guys. This one is...
It's rough, man.
Rough. So, this is the LaLaurie Mansion in New Orleans. It's...
The what?
The LaLaurie Mansion.
LaLaurie.
Whatever.
The LaLaurie.
But this mansion, it's been through some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
let's preface this, because we are trying to keep this, like, simply a paranormal show, but a lot of this paranormal stuff is going to come with heavy true crime background. Especially this one. So we're trying to stay out of mostly the true crime because it's been overdone, but you're going to get it sometimes.
But this one is one of the most popular ghost paranormal stories in New Orleans. And so many have claimed this mansion to be cursed. For almost 200 years, there has been multiple reports of paranormal activity coming from this mansion. And it's not been easy paranormal activity, not like a couple ghosts making noises or just moving things around. Yeah, it's
not
dark paranormal stuff. So, most of the hauntings were kind of said to be the slaves that were kept here, because the owner who had it, she owned a lot of slaves. She was not a good woman at all. But they have been said to have been slaves that she had kept on the property.
Mainly, like, chained up in the attic, right?
It was chained up in the attic, kept in holes in the walls, in the basement, just not in, say, ideal rooms. They would say it would be in a room, but it would just be a hole in the wall. So
if y'all have seen American Horror Story, Coven, this is
what it's based on.
This is based on, yeah.
So there was a room in the mansion where these slaves were kept. And she had at least 100 slaves, all kept in this one small room.
Like at one time?
Mm-hmm.
Like 100 at one time, or
Yeah.
just over the course
And
of her owning slaves?
She had over 400 slaves.
What the fuck?
And at one time she had 100 just in this room. She never had more than 100 at a time, but throughout the whole thing she had over 400 slaves. And people have heard moaning coming from this room, or like footsteps and screaming, not noises you'd want to hear while you're walking the halls of a building.
Yeah.
Many people who have stood near the house have reported feeling that they have been taken over by an extremely negative energy, like they feel like they've lost control of their body and they just feel different. They
like possessed?
Yeah. They feel like they're not themselves.
Gross.
In 1894, it got turned from a mansion into little apartments.
When?
1894.
Okay.
In 1894, this man who lived there...
Wait. Was she dead then?
It didn't say. It just said that in 1894 it was transformed into apartments.
Okay.
But in 1894 there was a man who lived in this apartment by himself. It was 2 apartments. So his apartment and another person's apartment. The other apartment vacant. So this man lived in this big building by himself, and one day his friends had come to, see him, and he was found brutally murdered in his room.
Oh.
And all of his things had been gone through and thrown everywhere. The police said that they suspect a robbery, but none of his personal items had been taken. And
so, not a robbery.
It was definitely not a robbery, but the police had just assumed it was. While the slaves were there, there's multiple stories about all of these slaves that were in the mansion. The main ones that are told is that most of the slaves she had were found tortured and just not in good conditions. And she had lost all of her slaves at one point. But she slowly, after killing all of these slaves she had, because none of her slaves had died from natural causes.
Right.
So she had lost all of her slaves, like they were taken from her after they had been found tortured and just...
But weren't they given back?
She slowly bought them back.
Yeah, that's what I remember hearing.
Yeah, she lost all of them and she bought back all the slaves that she had. One of the stories talks about how one of these slaves was found with their bones broken numerous times. Constantly broken and then re-put into unnatural positions.
Oh, God.
And they said when they found this lady, even when she moved her body, her bones remained crooked.
Oh.
And it says that she kind of resembled that of a crab because of how her body had been...
How the bones set.
Yeah, how they had been reshaped into making her look like this.
That's crazy.
Another story talks about how a man was found with a hole drilled in his head with a wooden spoon shoved through it, kind of as to stir his brains out.
Ew.
Another one was found with the skin around their eyes completely peeled back so that you could see the muscle and tissue.
Nope.
And it was like this for the public view. She had this one slave separated from the rest so that everyone could look and see what she had done to this poor lady.
Why?
This lady was not
She's fucked up.
an okay lady. But it has been said that due to all of these slaves she owned, there was a hole in the window that has been bricked up. People have said that the windows weren't proportioned correctly. So there was like 4 windows on one side, 2 on the other. So they were bricking up. Yeah, they were bricking up windows to make it look more appealing from the outside. But you can still see the window on the inside.
I don't like that.
But there was the main window. Everyone was like, this window, something happened here. But a medium went in and said this was not what had happened at this window. One slave, she had, say, pissed off other slaves and just wasn't getting along with them. And they pushed her out of a window on the highest floor. And she had plummeted to her death.
Wow. With
all of these slaves, some of the slaves were like getting together and having kids. The kids were being ripped out of them and taken from them as soon as they were born. One of the slaves, she had just had a baby boy and was getting ready to go show the guy she had been with. Before she even made it to him, she was shot and killed by the owner, and the baby was taken and tortured.
What the fuck?
And just, it was pretty fucked up.
Why?
Because the lady who owned all the slaves was a really, really bad racist. And she was...
They're just babies.
Yeah. Multiple slaves were found like this. They were found naked wrapped in their own intestines.
Yeah, what the fuck?
I mean, this lady tortured these slaves she had.
Sounds like it.
And yet she was still allowed to get more. Because, like I said, she had about 400 slaves.
She was a rich white woman.
Yeah, she was a rich white woman. But like I said, as to how this has been known to be cursed, this woman went through 7 husbands in like 30 years.
And I know she had like 4 kids, 3 kids, something like that.
No, she had a lot more than that. With one husband, she had 2. One she had 4. One
Jesus.
she had 6. And another one she only had 1. With all of this, none of her husbands lasted more than 5 years.
Did she kill them?
That's what I'm guessing happened because it said mysterious or unexplained deaths.
No.
So it's kind of a little fishy as to what happened to these men she was with. So this woman had a lot of kids left alone with all these kids in this big ass mansion and 100 slaves at a time. And all of her kids witnessed everything that had happened throughout everything.
Yeah.
But like I said about this place being cursed, nobody could own this building for more than a year without it physically driving them crazy or just ruining their lives. In 2009, Nicolas Cage actually owned the mansion, but he lost it not even 6 months later because of bankruptcy, and then it says his career tanked after that.
That's not good.
And
I love Nicolas Cage.
And they said it's because of the local New Orleans had said it was because of the curse. And like she had been saying about how if you've seen Coven, it was not filmed in this building because they had originally wanted to film it in this building because it was based on this story and these people. But they said when they were in the building, everyone was feeling too uneasy and they were feeling severely unsafe. That was their main thing. They said they didn't care about feeling uneasy. They just did not feel safe in the building. But it's just that a bunch of Hollywood actors who get paid a lot of money and really don't care what happens, it's kind of bad that they really felt that unsafe in this building. And people have said it's because of the story and how they were kind of portraying it, and it's said that the slaves were the ones, because of all the torture and everything they had gone through, that when is the mansion, it was, they didn't like that somebody was trying to tell her story. They didn't like that someone was trying to talk about it and trying to make money off of what had happened to them. So they were like, you can get the fuck out.
Can you blame them? Like, that's tragic.
So it had been turned into an all-girls, only African-American school. It had been said that some of these students had gone to their teachers and upperclassmen covered in bruises on their arms, like they had been beat with something. And when the teachers and everyone else would ask, what happened to you guys? All they could say was, the woman. They didn't know who she was just the woman.
Wow.
And this was the first all African-American school. It's also been rumored that these slaves, when the slaves would see the children, they would help with the children because, like I had said, all of their kids were ripped from their bodies.
Right.
Bad C-sections and stuff like that. So when the slaves would see these kids, they were doing the best they could to protect them.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the men slaves were rumored to be seen cradling kids who had been crying. The slaves were found walking the kids to their classes, or the kids would be found walking with a disembodied figure, just walking the halls. Before she had passed, she had moved back to France. She had been all around the world. New Orleans was just where she settled with her most recent husband. So she had given up on the building and just went back to France where she was from. And not too much later, she was also found dead in a very disturbing, like obviously tortured way. And they think possibly the ghosts had gone with her and tortured her like she had tortured them.
Hopefully.
I mean,
She deserves no less.
It has also been said that some of these slaves have been seen still doing the housework that she had them doing. But so when all of her husbands had passed and she had gotten all of her money, she was, like back in the 1800s, having $100 was considered rich.
Yeah.
So this woman had millions of dollars.
Like in today's money, yeah.
She was probably one of
rich.
the richest people who had been in New Orleans. But there was also a room in the basement she had that was full of torture devices that she had used on these slaves. She had found 2 slaves down there kind of like going through things, and she hung both of them from the corridor that went down into the basement.
That's gross.
Yeah, and it's rumored that her spirit, Madame
LaLaurie.
Yeah, LaLaurie's spirit kind of is still there, but she's not known to come out very often because when she does come out, because she is stuck in all eternity with the slaves that she had tortured and killed,
right?
They have been known to make her life hell.
Kind of like how it is in AHS.
Yeah, they have been known to torture this woman when she comes out of hiding.
As it should be.
Like, she has a place in her house where they cannot get to her. Like, they don't know where it is, so that's kind of her little bitty hiding spot. But yeah. I'm just waiting. One day, these slaves are going to find out where she is, and they're going to torture her 24/7. She's not going to have a single second to breathe to her.
She doesn't deserve it, at all.
She does not.
So, we want to thank you guys again for listening. This is the second one. It went a little bit easier this time because now we kind of know what we're doing. Again, our social media, you can find us on Snapchat,
TikTok,
Twitter,
Instagram. It's all
Facebook.
Yeah. It's what
DSSAI podcast. And if you guys want to send in listener tales, especially if you've been to these places that we're talking about, or even if you haven't and you've had your own little experiences, feel free to email us. It is dssaipodcast@gmail.com. And just title it, that way we know what we're looking for. We're getting a ton of emails, and it's hard to kind of sort through them for what's not a scam, basically. So, there's a couple more places that we're on now where you can listen to us. So, wherever you're listening to us now, obviously that doesn't change. But we can be found on the Podbean app, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Samsung, Podchaser, Boomplay, and Podcast Addict. We have applied for Pandora, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts, so hopefully soon you guys will see us there. Again, thank you for those who have listened to the podcast so far and still want more episodes. It definitely means a lot. I love getting the text or the little messages on Facebook about,
people enjoying
what
we're doing.
Yeah, enjoying it. So, again, thank you guys. We do have a Patreon. It is DSSAI Podcast. Again, I will link everything in the show notes if you guys are interested in becoming a Patreon. Being a Patreon gets you bonuses. So, it could be blooper reels or just extra episodes that no one else gets to hear unless you are a Patreon. So, a website is coming. A P.O. box is coming. So, just give us a little time on that. And for the 9 millionth time, thank you guys so much for listening and giving us an hour or more of your time. So, I think that's it for this episode. Again, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye! Bye.